All right, so are you ready to dive into the Bitcoin world today?
Always ready.
Okay, good, because we're going deep, specifically how it's reacting to, all this economic uncertainty we've been seeing and, well, the R word, recession.
Yeah, the dreaded R word. It's definitely got everyone's attention.
To say the least, Russ. So we'll unpack some fresh analysis from investing.com and FX Empire, see what they're saying. And, well, of course, it wouldn't be a Bitcoin deep dive without checking in on Michael Saylor, right?
Of course, our favorite Bitcoin evangelist. Never one to shy away from a bold statement. This time he's outdone himself, though.
Oh, how so?
Well, he's basically comparing Bitcoin to a firefighter, putting out an economic inferno. Like, ditch your fire extinguishers, folks. Bitcoin's the only fire department in town.
Gotta hand it to him. The man knows how to make an entrance, that's for sure. So dramatic. But is there any truth to it? Is Bitcoin really this safe haven it's made out to be when the economy gets rocky?
Well, let's see what's fueling this fire Saylor's so worked up about.
Okay, so what's he saying?
Well, the cryptocurrency market just took a pretty big hit, like $24 billion, which investing.com is directly linking to this recent economic data.
Okay, so that's definitely got to sting a little, even for the diehards out there.
Yeah, definitely got people's attention. But then there's this underlying concern about a potential recession in the U.S. I mean, to be clear, we're not officially there yet, but still.
And of course, we've got inflation still kind of simmering in the background. Can't forget about that.
Right, exactly. And it's this whole cocktail of economic anxieties, this fire that Saylor keeps mentioning, that has investors acting, well, kind of strange. They're anticipating that the Fed is actually going to cut interest rates to try and, stimulate the economy, even though inflation's still a thing.
Which is kind of like bringing lighter fluid to a bonfire, isn't it?
It really is.
Normally, central banks raise interest rates to try to cool inflation down, so these anticipated rate cuts, they really make you wonder, are investors super confident about inflation going down, or are they just really worried about the economy tanking?
Maybe a little of both. It's hard to say for sure.
Oh, for sure. Now, bringing Saylor back into the mix here, investing.com highlighted how he's using all this uncertainty to his advantage, right? Basically saying, come on, everyone, Bitcoin is the only lifeboat in this sea of economic turmoil.
Exactly.
And let's be real, considering his company's got a mountain of Bitcoin, it's hard not to see this as a well-timed pep talk, don't you think?
I mean, it does make you wonder if he's got a fireman costume on standby for these kinds of occasions.
Right.
But all jokes aside, his optimism might be a bit premature.
Why do you say that?
Well, FX Empire did a deep dive into the latest CPI, that's the Consumer Price Index report, and it's not as rosy a picture as some might have hoped. Remember a while back when everyone was celebrating that inflation was finally under control?
Yeah, it feels like ages ago. What happened? Did someone forget to tell inflation to play dead?
It seems so. This latest report actually shows that inflation rose.
Oh, no kidding. By how much?
2.4%.
2.4%. So not exactly a runaway train, but still.
And that's just it. It's higher than the 2.3% that analysts had predicted.
So that begs the question, 2.4% doesn't sound that bad.
Yeah. And you're right. It's lower than the rates we were seeing just a few months ago. But this little uptick, it throws a wrench in the narrative that the Fed has, tamed the inflation beast.
Yeah, for sure.
And they might just pump the brakes on those rate cuts that, well, let's face it, everyone seems to be banking on.
Everyone's holding their breath for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the heart of it all. How does all this economic drama actually impact our favorite digital asset, Bitcoin?
Right. Well, FX Empire dug into that, and they found that the two CPI reports before this latest one, they're actually followed by pretty significant Bitcoin rallies. And get this, those rallies happened even when the CPI reports themselves weren't exactly painting this, super optimistic picture of the economy.
It's true.
It's like Bitcoin just thrives on a little bit of chaos, maybe.
Well, that's what's so fascinating, the anticipation, right? The whole what if around a CPI report and what it might mean for the Fed's next move. It seems to carry more weight for Bitcoin's price than the report itself.
Interesting.
It really highlights that speculation, that uncertainty that's always swirling around the crypto market.
Yeah, so like that friend who throws a party every time there's a storm, just in case the power goes out.
Exactly. Always prepared.
Yeah.
And FX Empire's analysis, it goes even deeper, looking at some, technical indicators. So remember how Bitcoin dipped recently?
It did, yeah.
Hit $58,901. Lowest it's been in 23 days.
Yeah, I remember those headlines. Definitely not the kind of news that gets Bitcoin enthusiasts doing backflips.
Right. But what's interesting is that FX Empire suggests that this dip, it could actually be a bullish signal.
Oh, How so?
So they point to this thing called the Keltner Channel. And I know it sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty simple.
Okay, break it down for me.
So imagine like a tube that basically surrounds all of Bitcoin's price movements.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
When the price drops towards the bottom of that tube, like it did, it often like rebounds upward. Think of it like a bouncing ball.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
Right.
So we've got a potential bounce back on the horizon, fueled by this recent dip. What else is in the mix?
Well, they also looked at analysis from the CME Group, the futures and options people.
You're right.
They're predicting an 86.4% chance of a Fed rate cut on November 7th.
Wow, okay, so we've got a potential bounce back from the lows, a decent chance of the Fed making a move that could weaken the dollar, which, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a weaker dollar usually makes these alternative assets, Bitcoin included, more attractive, right?
Exactly. When the dollar seems unsteady, people look for alternatives. And Bitcoin's right there, waiting.
Right, playing the long game.
Exactly. And then, get this, FX Empire brings up another thing called the choppiness index.
The what?
Choppiness index, yeah. I know, it sounds made up, but it's a real thing.
Okay, I'm sure it is. Financial analysts always coming up with these very creative names for things. So what's this choppiness index telling us? Calm before the storm? Or are we in for some rough seas with Bitcoin? Choppy waters or smooth sailing? What's the verdict?
Well, right now, it's saying things might be about to shift. I mean, it's been turbulent, right?
Yeah.
We know that.
Understatement of the year.
Right. But the choppiness index is pointing towards Bitcoin breaking out of this pattern. And FX Empire seems to think it'll be a breakout to the upside.
Which brings us to that pretty bold prediction from FX Empire.
$70,000 Bitcoin.
By the end of October. I mean, that's just around the corner. And considering how volatile things have been.
Ambitious, for sure.
To say the least, yeah. So what needs to happen? I mean, what needs to line up perfectly for Bitcoin to actually hit that $70,000 mark?
Well, for starters, we'd need to see this economic uncertainty stick around.
Which, let's be real, it's kind of like the one constant these days.
Pretty much. We'd also need the Fed to actually go through with that rate cut in November.
Like they're predicting... Okay, so check. What else?
And, probably the biggest factor, positive market sentiment.
Ah, yes, the wild card.
Exactly. That's the one thing that's basically impossible to predict with any real certainty. It's like, which way is that flock of birds going to fly next?
Right. So unpredictable. Okay, so we've got the U.S. economy trying to find its footing, and then we've got Bitcoin doing its own thing, like it always does.
And while it might seem like those two are on totally separate tracks, they are definitely intertwined.
Oh, for sure.
Bitcoin, it kind of thrives on a bit of uncertainty, a little disruption, makes things exciting.
Keeps things interesting.
Definitely. But it also makes it really, really hard to predict.
For sure. So for our listeners out there, what's the key takeaway? What should they be thinking about as we navigate this crazy landscape?
Here's something to chew on. Let's say FX Empire is right on the money. The Fed cuts rates, Bitcoin shoots up to $70,000. Would that be enough to actually, pull the U.S. economy out of its slump? Or are we looking at two totally separate fires that even a Bitcoin-powered fire truck, like Saylor's picturing, couldn't handle?
Right. That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Maybe Saylor needs a whole fleet of those fire trucks. Well, that's what we do here at the Deep Dive, right? We unpack these complicated topics, connect the dots, and a lot of times we end up with even more questions than when we started. But hey, maybe those questions spark a new wave of discovery for you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.